We ended up building a very specific and very exclusive headhunting business. I walked into the room absolutely terrified. I'd done all my preparation, I was ready. The guy comes into the room, opens his bag, lifts out an envelope, hands me it and says, people kept coming up to me and saying, can I get tickets for this lunch? It's like, what on earth are you talking about? I've never run a lunch in an event in my life. Suddenly the conversation started getting bigger conversations that we couldn't address by just bringing people together. Let's be honest, we all know we need to network, but most of us hate it, and I'm one of those.
If you're looking to be inspired, motivated and educated by the business journeys and lessons learnt of Leeds business owners, then this is the podcast for you. And I'm your host, Phil Fraser. Before we start, I have one simple request. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on the app that you're listening on. Just to let you know, this is the last episode of the current series. The podcast is going on its summer holidays next week, but don't worry, we'll be back again in August. After listening to today's episode, there's a back catalogue of 83 previous episodes that you can listen to get your weekly Leeds Business Podcast fix while we're away. On today's Leeds Business Podcast, I'm delighted to have with me Gordon Bateman, founder of Climb. Hi, Gordon.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm good. Now, lots and lots of people around Leeds will know you as the founder of Climb, but I want to start pre-Climb. So, talk us through CRSI. What is it, and how did it start?
I think that's right. A lot of people do know as Climb, but actually, most of my career is actually a series of fortunate accidents, to be honest. So, I was due to join a big corporate leaving university, and they reneged on the sponsorship deal at the last minute. So I ended up working for a small business, which the idea was to do a year and then go back into corporate world, because in the 90s, no one went to work for a small business. But I actually loved it. I just found my vocation. So we grew that business to over 400 people and ended up floating it on the stock market. But my biggest challenge of all that time was the people side of the business. So when I left in 2001, I had this idea that I'd work exclusively with small and early stage businesses about the growth of their organizations. And so started working with the venture capital market, looking at the portfolio businesses and identifying the people needs within those businesses, because most founders find that the biggest challenge of growing a business is having the right people in the right place at the right time. And that essentially was the start of CRSI. So it's a consultancy business that works exclusively with, I would say, early stage and high growth businesses, looking at the people strategy of those businesses and building the organizational structures that are geared to meet that accelerated growth. I'm conscious that's a long answer, but that's really where it came from.
Okay, so do you put people into startups, or you just advise from the outside?
So the main bulk of things was originally around the organizational design. So what does a shape need to look like? But then we found the traditional recruiting models didn't really work, because anyone who works in an early stage business knows that, and I can say this because I am one as well, is that it's a nightmare. Founders constantly changing. It's a constantly dynamic environment. So what works within an established business where you're filling a requirement really doesn't work in a high growth business. So we ended up having to do the fulfillment as well. So we ended up building a very specific and very exclusive headhunting business that sits along the side. The majority of what we do, and CRSI still exists, by the way, we do a lot of work within this sector, where our main focus is the advisory board, the formal board, and the executive side, although we do work in other parts of the business as well. So, but yes, we start with the design and the analysis and then do the build if it's necessary.
Would you say that's the thing you find startup and growth businesses find most difficult, is actually getting the right senior members of staff into the team or onto the board? Is that the biggest problem you see them facing?
Yeah, very much so. And actually, if you kind of talk to people like the Scale Up Institute, they'll tell you it flicks between that or raising money. Depends on which day of the week you ask, I think, is where it is. But consistently, that's one of the biggest challenges. And I think, firstly, it's, do you know what you really need? Particularly if you're a first-time founder or first-time leader, do you know what that team needs to look like? Then there's a fear bit. What if I get this wrong? What if I bring someone into my business that isn't going to take me in the direction I want to go with? And have I got the tools and capability to do that? Then how do you assess somebody? I did a mentor on a number of accelerator programs, and I was with one a couple of years ago, and it was a young woman who was absolutely exceptional at what she was doing. But she said to me, how do I interview somebody that for a job that I don't know how to do myself without looking like an idiot? She actually used an expletive at that point. But and it is really difficult. Interviewing is a formal skill. People think, oh, just because I talk every day, I can't actually do that. So there's the assessment piece. And then finally, what about the engagement? Once you've got these people on board and in the business, how do you keep them happy? How do you keep them engaged? How do you get the best out of them? So all of that mashed together is really, really difficult. And in a big company, probably got people around you to help you do it, like an HR department or people who've done it before. In an early stage business and a high growth business, it can be really difficult because you're doing it by yourself. And it isn't, but it feels more important than if you're in. It's important whatever size of company you're in, but when it's your own business or when you've got external shareholders, then you think, wow, this is critical.
Right. Okay, you said what happens if I get it wrong. So what happens if you get it wrong?
You need the ability to deal with it quickly. Do you know, I think, and I think a lot of business owners and founders and business leaders will probably resonate with this. We spend more time talking about the bad actors and the people who are not performing in the business than we do about those that are doing really well, which is counterintuitive. So if someone's not, and I'm equally guilty of that, right? So if someone's not performing, you do your very best to get them on track and to get them, but sometimes it just isn't right. And you need the tools to be able to do that. I shouldn't really say this, but the kind of formal ways of doing this, of disciplinaries, etc., just don't work in an early stage business. Everybody's got a mate who's a lawyer, and they'll roll them in if you try and do something. So you've got to work with the person as a person, sit down with them, have grown-up conversations, have that discussion. Usually when it's not right, and we did an interview actually with the head of talent from Snowflake last year on Climb, and we talked about this. Usually when it's not right, both people know. And actually both people are waiting for that conversation. I remember first time I had this many, many years ago was first person I had to have a conversation with. I walked into the room absolutely terrified. I'd done all my preparation. I was ready. The guy comes into the room, opens his bag, lifts out an envelope, hands me it and says, I'm going to resign. But it is spotting it, understanding it, having the grown-up conversations, trying to fix it and dealing with it quickly. A lot of us just don't deal with things quickly. Yeah. And it doesn't always work because there's, people are involved, and when people are involved, it becomes messy and it becomes difficult.
Yeah. It was actually a topic we discussed with Jordan Appleson, who was on last month, and he was talking about a guy he basically hung on to for too long. And I'm guilty. I did it. I did the same. I hung on to a guy for far too long. And once you've done it, you go, well, I wish I'd done that earlier. And that's often the issue. And it's sort of grasping that nettle.
And you're right. So. Again, I don't know if Ian will thank me for this, but Ian McLeish, who was head of Snowflake head of talent for Snowflake. We had this conversation as we were about to walk on stage at Climb last year, and we talked about it on stage that actually, when someone says they're leaving your business, if they tell you they're leaving or they tell you they're going, most people shake hands at that point. They actually almost congratulate each other, So I think there is. People don't want to let the business down, and the business doesn't want to let people down. But actually, the right answer when something isn't working is to grasp that nettle and just have that conversation. And there was a guy I hired, again, many years ago, and I had the conversation with him. And he was a bit stressed at the time. He didn't, he was a bit grumpy. We're actually really good friends now. He came back about 6 months later. He said, do you know what? That was the best thing that ever happened. He was an absolute recruiter, spray and pray, if you like, get a load of CVs, bang them over to client and make that happen. That's what he did. That's, it was stack them high and get it done. That's a million miles away from where we were. He was uncomfortable in the organization that we were running. I told him he needs to go to a recruitment agency. He did it, and he's now a director of that firm, so it is just having that conversation sometimes.
Yeah. Now, we've talked about CRSI. Amongst the other hats you wear, talk to us about Investor Ladder. That came sort of 5, 6, 7 years after CRSI started?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So I'm sometimes a little bit off message to some of the local messages around investment. So I think the UK is an amazing place for raising funding for your business. We've got the third biggest venture capital community in the world. It just happens to be 2.5 hours away from Leeds, right? But no one ever says to the steel industry it needs to move out of Sheffield, right? It just is where it is. And so there's money sitting around there. And my clients who were based in London were really struggling to navigate the north. So they were coming to the north often, or not as often as people here might like them to do. It is a very large geography in terms of square miles, or however you want to measure it, and it is very fragmented in terms of where are the businesses. And so from an out of town perspective, and the analogy I often talk about is when you go to a new city you've never been to before, probably the first place you eat is a chain restaurant. And then when you get to know people, you'll find the little niche cafe or bar or restaurant that's almost Michelin starred and hidden away in a little alley. And so I was really kind of, a lot of things come out of frustration. People who know me will know I can be a grumpy old man. So I was a little bit frustrated that these guys down there, for want of a better term, are trying to navigate here. And I live here. I live in Leeds. Yorkshire's my home. And I knew that businesses here were struggling to connect with the investors in the south or internationally as well. So I invited two people for lunch. I invited John Coker, who's now at ECA, but he was the investment director at MMC, and Erin Brooke, who was the head of Silicon Valley Bank. I said, come north, I'll introduce you to a couple of people and we can connect you with the ecosystems and you'll be able to navigate it. I have no idea what happened, but I then got a migraine and I went to sit in the corner of this dinner for half an hour. My migraines fortunately don't last very long. And people kept coming up to me and saying, can I get tickets for this lunch? I was like, what on earth are you talking about? I've never run a lunch in an event in my life. But on the train on the way back north, I thought, hang on a minute, there's too many people ask this. This is actually a thing. There is clearly this mismatch. So it was in Manchester, forgive me, Leeds, but we organised a get-together. I invited just people I knew, so 30 years of working within venture capital, private equity, investment, contacted people that I knew and said, come up north. There's going to be no format. Don't expect white tablecloths. I'm just going to pay for this myself. We'll get in a room and I'll introduce you to people in the north who know what's going on in the north. We had £16 billion of active funds. So not funds under management, money that people could actually spend in a room on a rainy Wednesday afternoon in Manchester. There was clearly no GDPR a number of years ago. And so we gave everyone each other's contact details. And I was like, we're done. You know each other now, crack on. And then my phone started ringing again and again. Did you have a lunch, Gordon? I didn't get invited. What are you doing in Manchester with this thing? Can you do another one? So we ended up on no format, no business plan, no commercial model. Was whenever I could be bothered, whenever I had a spare moment, we'd just organise a get together. We did them in Leeds, Manchester, Sheffield, Birmingham, Newcastle, all over the country, just getting groups of usually around 60 to 100 people together just to help navigate that ecosystem. And that network now is 2,100 and something investors from all over the world who have expressed an interest in better connecting and knowing what's going on outside what's often referred to as a golden triangle, so the London, Oxford, Cambridge cluster. And it just works. We're not a broker. We're not anything really. We will be looking at ways of formalizing this because my wife calls it my expensive hobby. But that's really what it's about. It's a network of like-minded people who really want to help better connect and work in the north.
Okay, and that's under the title of Investor Ladder.
Correct. Yeah. So that's another fortunate accident. I was actually in Liverpool hosting one of these sessions. And a guy from London comes up to me and goes, this has been amazing. He says, I've done a year's worth of networking in one afternoon. And our format is very much around relationship and networking. And I'm sure we'll come on to climb later, but that's what we're all about, is building relationships. And I said, this has been amazing. He said, I've pushed 3 of my companies up the investor ladder, i.e. he invested at very early stage, met people later on, and they'd looked at investing into those 3 businesses. Genuinely, I'm under the table with my phone, texting the office, buy investorladder.com. So for 4 years, this thing was called this investor lunch thing. which doesn't really stick and doesn't work. And so from somebody just using the term investor ladder, and that thankfully being available, that's when we got a name. We incorporated it into a company because we didn't want someone else. Somebody did say, I'm going to run an investor ladder. And you can't, because that's our thing. That's a brand. And so we registered it as a company. Investor ladder has existed ever since. And it just does what we say on the tin. It helps that interconnection, build a supply chain to connect businesses, or to connect investors, really.
Okay. You mentioned it. You mentioned Climb. Before we get on to Climb, because we are going to talk about Climb, I'm going to talk to our listeners and viewers about the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. The Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal has two sides to it. My side of the deal is every week I bring you inspirational, motivational, and fascinating business leaders, totally for free. You, listener and viewer, have one job in return, and that is to recommend this podcast to one other person. So that's the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. Sound like a fair deal, Gordon?
Absolutely. It's great. I've been talking about this for weeks, actually, to people I know. So
there you go. Fantastic. Well done. Okay, so let's talk Climb. So from my perspective, about 2 years ago, my summer 2023, my LinkedIn exploded with everybody saying, I'm at Climb, this is brilliant, I'm at Climb. I was like, what the hell is this? So tell us about Climb.
Yeah, so again, fortunate accident number 3, I guess, really. So as I mentioned with Investor Ladder, we were having these get-togethers of investors from all over the world. And suddenly the conversations started getting bigger conversations that we couldn't address by just bringing people together. So I think connections had started happening in the region, but we started talking about social mobility, gender equality, diversity, inclusion, sustainability. And I was like, guys, and when I say guys, I mean men and women. More than half our network are women entrepreneurs, women investors. So I thought we need to do something bigger. And I'm invited to, fortunately, and I'm involved with lots of different networks and different events. And if I give the example of women in business, of a subject that I'm very passionate about, I'm often the token bloke. I'm often there's like 3 or 4 men in a room, and it's 80 or 90 amazing women. So I thought, if we run an event that's focused on those subjects, we're not going to change hearts and minds. Yes, we can support and amplify messages, but actually we've got a challenge because the people who go to these things are already bought in. So I thought, I know what I'll do. And I was just coming back from an event called Slush in Helsinki, where I got all the way to Helsinki in November in the cold to meet a bunch of people from England. And I was, again, frustrated with the format of what promised to be a great event and was ridiculously expensive. And I thought, why don't we have that here? We've got amazing things in regions, like the Leeds Digital Festival happens in autumn. That's great at showcasing and bringing the digital sector together. But the big kind of national stroke international showcase event like Slush or Web Summit or South by Southwest just didn't exist. And so I thought, if I pinch all the best bits of all of those and do that and embed all these pillars of social mobility, gender equality, etc., into that event. So have an event that is like a music festival in formats that's all about relationship building, all about business growth in every aspect, and we embed those things in, we can start to change hearts and minds. No one knew who we were. I hadn't got a clue what I was getting into, by the way. I just thought, we'd do a thing with 100 people. It won't be hard to do it with 300. Somebody put 3,000 on LinkedIn, and I went, let's just do that then. And that was Climb. And our marketing team, a company called And Parasols at the time, were amazing. They're great at all of this lateral thinking. So Investor Ladder and Climb was how the name Climb came about. And we thought, let's give it a go. Let's do this in 2023. Leeds is an amazing place to do business, right? And I said, I hope there's people outside Leeds. It's really, really collaborative. So people just picked up the phone. Gordon, how can I help? What do you need? How to do this? Sandra Moore, I was genuinely at certain points of this. Anyone who knew, forgive my language, but my arse was hanging out. We had no idea what we do. Bear in mind, we were running 2 other businesses at the time. This was another expensive, and it was an expensive hobby. It is an expensive hobby, was to do this thing. So that was it. We built 5 stages. We had 200 speakers, and we had 1,800 people turn up. And it was just like a festival. It's been described to me by many different people who don't know each other. The word magical just comes out. Now, I'm filling up with emotion when I talk about this, because that's not us. That's the people who come, right? That is the people who come into Leeds Dock, connect with each other, and they come from all over the world. We have people from Australia. We even, and you might not believe this, but we even had people from London who came to Leeds, right? So, but the atmosphere that it was all about, it wasn't about, oh, we've got X or Y speaker. Yes, we have all of that. But someone's coined this phrase, and I do love it. It's your climb story. It's about what people take away from this. We've got people who raised money. We've got people who've built new collaborations. We've got two people who didn't even know each other existed meet at one of our events. Turns out they're cousins. This year, we'll be celebrating a couple's 1 year anniversary. They met at Climb, right? Two founders of a business met at Climb, and they're now, well, I hope they're still a couple, but they were a couple a few weeks ago. So yes, it's a business festival. It's all around every aspect. And we talked about people earlier, but every aspect of growing your business. But it's in a manner that's all around connecting and interconnecting. And we do that in a way that means that it's safe, it's easy, it's relaxed. Because let's be honest, we all know we need to network, but most of us hate it. And I'm one of those. And that's what Climb is all about.
Okay. Now, Climb's actually on next week. Just give us the dates and the venues.
Yep. So it's the 2nd and 3rd of July. We do have an investor day on the 1st of July, but that's invite only. It's there to make sure we get all the investors into the room for the 3 days. So the main 2 days of Climb are the 2nd and 3rd of July. We host it all in Leeds Dock. We take over all Leeds Dock. We say we paint Leeds Dock orange, and we genuinely do. It's really cool. We have United Autosports are bringing one of their cars. Last year, they came to Climb to talk about leadership and to talk about teams. They left Climb on the Thursday evening, went to Le Mans and won Le Mans in their class. So they're bringing their LMP2 car. We've got firewalking. We've got music festivals. We've got drinks receptions. Again, I think there's over 300 speakers this year. So, but everything is housed in Leeds Dock. So it starts at 10 o'clock. I would genuinely recommend getting there early. I always say with Climb, expect the unexpected. There's going to be some pretty cool things before we actually launch at 10 o'clock. It'll go on late into the evening, and there's free drinks receptions, and then there's all sorts of different parties happening. And then we start again on the 3rd and do it all over again. And often with events, people kind of fizzle off around lunchtime. I generally wouldn't. Last year, I had a session at 4:30 at the end of day 2, and I said, we might as well just do it in the pub, because who's going to stick around? It was massively oversubscribed, and people were gate crashing to get in. But every session is worth £200 for a ticket. Every individual session, never mind knitting them all together.
Yeah. And there will be a link to buy tickets in the show notes. So make sure you get your ticket, because it is ticket only. You mentioned there's 300 speakers. I was looking at the list last night, and purely to plug Leeds Business Podcast, there are 11 of my previous guests speaking. So if you allow me, I'm going to list everybody who's been on the Leeds Business Podcast who is going to be speaking at Climb, and there'll be a link to each of their episodes in the show notes. So in no particular order: Mark Roberts, Jonathan Strait, Anna Sutton, Chris Black, George Fairhall, Helen Oldham, Jordan Darg, Lee J. Walker, Peter Kirby, Simon Gray, Zandra Moore have all been on the podcast and are all speaking at Climb. And in a future episode, we'll also have Hazel, who will be also speaking. So that makes 12, and you're 13. So, unfortunately, I won't be there because I'm on holiday, and I'm really, really, really annoyed. So give us some highlights that we should look out for of the talks that are going to be at Climb this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is just highlights. I could sit and talk about this forever. It doesn't surprise me that a number of our guests have been on the podcast. That's how I found out about the podcast. Is one of the things that was really key to us was bring together the best, not the people who are just on the normal circuit. So we've got 3 goals on the commercial side, on the economic side of Climb, one of which is how do we provide an environment to better support the great businesses that are in this region. So a lot of the content is focused around how do you grow your business, and we brought people from all over the world to do that. So we've got sessions on how to grow internationally, where we've brought people who've genuinely been and done that. An organisation called NetZoo, who I met at Climb last year, who are now very active in the north. A company called VividQ, who so very active in the US. A company called VividQ, who I met a couple of years ago and were looking to expand into the US. And companies from Leeds who have gone over into Singapore. So the internationalization track, if you like, is really valuable. These are people who've been there and done that. So that's the first thing. How do we support people here? The second, we've touched on this, is how do we get this massive amount of money that's slushing around that wants to invest in businesses connected into here? So we want to showcase businesses and the ecosystems from the region out to people who are not from here. So that's where we brought individuals, again, who've been there and done it. Mark Roberts' sessions is really cool. So he's taking a founder at startup stage. He's going to interview them in a fireside chat. He's doing one in a scale-up business that is going through the motions, and somebody who's established and has grown. We've got Simon, who you mentioned, Simon Gray, who took Boost Drinks and exited it. He's talking about his journey. So that gives us the ability to showcase the amazing things in the region out to other people. And they're real stories. So they're people sharing what they've actually been and done. So there's loads and loads of takeaways from all these sessions. It's not just people telling their stories. And then the third part of this is there's a lot of inward investment. So what I mean by that is companies from outside the region, whether that be from the south or from Scotland or internationally, who are looking to expand geographically. And so what we want to do is land more of those in the north. There's a massive drive, both of money coming in internationally and companies heading south. So what we want to do is provide an environment of when those companies come into the UK, that they know that why the region is amazing. When I say the region, I mean the whole of the north is an amazing place to land their businesses. So we have sessions talking around those sides of and great success stories of companies like the Bank of England, etc., who have chosen Leeds to be their new home. In terms of guests, it's a massive list. It just needs scrolling through. So Peter Hutton is actually from Leeds, but at one point he was the global head of sport for Meta. He was the head of Eurosport. His Wikipedia page alone takes about 4 or 5 pages. He's coming over from Silicon Valley. He moved over to Silicon Valley a number of years ago. He's coming over to talk about his journey and sports media. We've got a guy called Jeff Cohen. Jeff's on the board of a business that I work with. Jeff was Chunk from the Goonies. He's now an investor, an international entrepreneur, and a big lawyer in Hollywood. So he's coming and talking about things of growing your business. Jennifer Burns, a really good friend of mine. Jennifer, I love to bits. I met her because we were on the board of a business together. All of my CRSI hats. Jennifer at the time was the CTO for Microsoft in the US. So I was delighted in 2023. I was going to get the CTO of Microsoft speaking at my first ever Climb. And then she resigned. So I'm going to leave. And she joined the early stage business. She sold that business in 2024, 9 months later. Or 2023, sorry, 9 months later. So we had a good story because now we've got the ex-CTO of Microsoft who just built and sold the business. She didn't come in 2024 because she sold that business again. But she's bringing a session which is amazing. She's the only person we're allowing to do a keynote speech and then a fireside chat, which is around why founders should change the playbook and not just be looking at this hyper growth and taking investment. The sessions on leadership, the sessions on sales, the sessions on marketing, the session on international growth. I could just go on and fill the entire podcast with the agenda, but I say this with a massive amount of respect for my team, because it's not me, is that I've never seen anything like this. And I'm terrified of what we're going to do in 2026. I have no idea how we're going to match this. But that agenda is phenomenal. And then there's a whole health tech bit that my colleague Pilar has built alongside MediLink and BioNow, focused specifically on that one sector. So yeah, the highlights is the whole damn thing. I'm afraid it's just, I need Colin Glass's time machine. You know, Colin Glass, of course, you find him everywhere. I'm convinced he's got a time machine or he's cloned himself so he can get to multiple things. I need that machine, whatever it is, because Climb is so good this year that it's everyone's going to be spoiled for choice.
There you go. There's another guest from the Leeds Business Podcast getting a name check there, Colin Glass as well. I'll put Colin's interview in there as well. So we've talked about this amazing thing that Climb is. I think this is a perfect opportunity for you now to do your how-to. So tell us what your how-to is and tell us how to do it.
So my how-to is how to get the most out of events. I thought about this long and hard of what to talk about, and I could have talked about my professional career, but this is a thing that I wasn't very good at, and why I built my own event, I guess, really, or why I built an event of this thing. So it's something over the last 3 years I've studied a lot of and asked people how to get the most out of it. So as a delegate and as a sponsor of events, I've been so many different things where I've come away and gone, yeah, it was kind of all right. Where did I, how could I have got more from that? And particularly with an event the size of something like Climb, is there'll be 3,000 people there next week. How do you meet the 200 people you want to meet? So that's what I thought of my how-to.
Okay, so how do we do it?
Yeah, so I think we're a week away, right? So the first thing is get onto social media and promote that you're going. Get onto LinkedIn, say you're going. Talk to people who are going to Climb, who are, and tell them what you want. Absolutely. Like, I'm Gordon Bateman. I'm the founder of Climb, and I want to meet amazing people who can help me accelerate my career faster. Let's say this is what I want to do. Spell that out. The best way, I believe, is to do that as a little. I hate this, right? But doing it as a little to camera video, so people can actually see that and see that you're as a human. Apparently, it's better for the algorithm, and secondly, people know what you look like. So that's the first. We've got a week to do that, right? Getting onto the social media platforms and saying, I'm coming. There is a lot of people on and if you tag at Climb UK and hashtag Climb25, then people who are going will follow that and they'll pick that up. The second is the app. So we've been to many events with different apps. We had an app for the last 2 years and it was all right. This year, we've spent through the nose to build an app. So we've bought a system called Brella. It's a great app. It'll even recommend who you should meet. So take the time to upload your information and talk about on that app who you want to meet. People do use it. Those who used the app last year said it was the best thing ever. It was a really great way to connect and interconnect. And as I say, with Brella, it's a lot more sophisticated, so it'll help connect people. The third thing is if you're a founder or a business looking for funding, we've done a deal with a company called Diligencia. So Diligencia will let you upload, and again, it's not too hard to do this, but it lets you upload your company information, and that goes onto their system. We've built a virtual expo for investors. So one of the things that people say is, can't the investors wear different coloured lanyard, or can't they make themselves known? The answer is no. They hate that. They don't want a target on their back. So for them, all the investors have got a free digital stand at a virtual expo. You as an individual, as a founder or business, can walk through that. It's live now. You can walk through that and start looking at what these investors want and what they're looking for. And if you want to connect with them via the app, they then get your Diligencia details. Diligencia does some really clever things. It also suggests which investors you should meet. So that's a real powerful thing. And you know what? Just go up and talk to people. Everybody's there to meet people. So it can be a bit awkward, but honestly, I've met people who are amazing at this. And again, we're going to talk about this guy in a second, but people who are good at networking are just shamelessly just go up to people and say, hi, I'm whoever. What do you do? Or how are you finding the event? We've built this food festival outside. And people meet there, they chat there. There was a company in 2023, he just lost a £2 million deal while he was at Climb. So £2 million investment. Goes outside, goes and grabs a coffee, just starts chatting to some people outside and raised £2 million from a company called River Capital, right? So it is just actually biting your bottom lip. It is for me. That's my trait. And then just go, I've got to do this. I hate it, but everyone's here in the same boat, and it is a very friendly environment. But pre-market that you're going, get on the app and use that as much as you can. use a Diligentia platform. And I'm not saying that to plug them. It is just a very cool way to do that. There is also a thing called Funding Hero, which is they've given this to all our delegates for free, which is about investment readiness. So use that as well to help guide what you're going to do. Get through the stands and the virtual stands, and then just go up to people and say hi. You never know; they might buy you a drink. So so it's a good. That would be my house for getting the most out of something like Climb.
Brilliant. And a lot of what you said there relates to lots and lots of events we all go to, not just Climb. I know you're bigging up Climb, but it's relevant to everywhere. It's relevant to everywhere.
100%.
Before we go, every guest gets the opportunity to give another Leeds business a shout out. So I know you've mentioned them a couple of times already, but who's your shout out to?
It's a company called NetZoo. So I met Angus, who's the founder of NetZoo, at Climb in 2023, and they've got a really interesting platform which is aimed at the creative industry. So for us, if you're looking for a job, you might go onto LinkedIn and upload a profile or whatever it may be. For someone who's in the creative industry, that can be really tough. And the creative industry is going through a massive change. So NetZoo is a platform which is geared at connecting people from the creative industry into from creative roles into the creative industry. The reason why they're a shout out is this is one of those people who's just got it. I worked with him and told him about expansion, how to grow the business, and we're going to talk about this at Climb. But he's expanded into the US, and some of the people I've mentioned coming over from the US are on his advisory board. He is a prolific networker. He did what I said in my how to. Went over to the US, sat at a hotel, introduced himself to people, got Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz to give him his personal email address, and they're in conversation. So, and they're flying, and he's very much a good advocate for the Leeds ecosystem.
Okay, and there'll be a link to them in the show notes below. Gordon, it's been absolutely fascinating. Apologies to listeners and viewers who aren't going to be able to get to Climb, and I know we've been banging the drum a little bit, but this is Leeds Business Podcast doing its bit to help the Climb organisation. And obviously, people can just come up to you and say, "Hi, Gordon."
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this.
Thank you very much. So that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you hit the follow button so every new episode gets sent straight to your phone. See you next week.